All right, good evening. This is the Wellfleet Housing Authority. I'm Elaine McElroy, and we're very happy to have Jean Stanley here tonight to give us an explanation of the housing rehabilitation loan that is available to Wellfleet homeowners. So Jean, tell us what we need to know.
Okay, so the first thing that I like to always start off with is that it is called a housing rehab loan program. However, the funding source is called a community development block grant. So most people get very nervous when they hear loan because that leads everyone to think you're going to have to pay it back. So these repairs are funded by a mechanism that we call a 0% deferred forgivable loan. So that means that there's no interest charged ever. Deferred means there's no monthly payments. And forgivable means that over the course, the term of the loan is 15 years. So over 15 years, 1/15 of the value of the loan will be erased. Okay, so hypothetically speaking, if your loan was $30,000, 1/15 would be $2,000. So every year that you're living in your home after the repairs and you have homeowners insurance, that's a requirement, $2,000 will be erased. Okay, so at the end of 15 years, your $30,000 loan is now zero. And you're issued a discharge and it turns into a grant. So they would like to make it a grant and just give the money away, but we do put a mortgage on the property. It just sits there. It doesn't really do anything until you go to sell the property. Okay, so if you're living in your home for 15 years, it's just going to continually decline till it goes to zero and it will be discharged. If you went to sell your home 10 years in, every year, $2,000 would be erased for 10 years. So your $30,000 loan now becomes minuses $20,000. So now you only owe $10,000. And that would come right off the sale price. So the loan doesn't really do anything. There's no payments made. It just sits there until you do something with the property, meaning either you sell it or if you wanted to refinance, then we would issue a subordination because you're not making any payments. We would let the lender go ahead of us. Okay, so does that make sense so far? So these loans are available to Wellfleet residents. You have to be a year-round homeowner. You have to own your own home. You have to have homeowners insurance for the full 15 years. And you have to meet income eligibility requirements. So it's for households that meet the 80% of median income. So for example, a household of 2, the maximum income is $62,200.
I'm going to show, I'll put that up on the screen for just a moment, Jean.
So as your household increases, so does the income limit. And that includes all people over 18 that are fully employed. Now, if you have an 18-year-old full-time student in your house, we don't need to count their income, you know, I mean, unless they're making a ton of money, but most kids are just making enough to go to school. So it's all income. So if you have a household of 4 people, say, and you have mom and dad and grandma lives there and one 20-year-old college student, we would take the income from mom and dad. If grandma had Social Security, we would count her Social Security. And if the 20-year-old college student was just working part-time in the summer, we wouldn't count that income at all. So we go by total income in the household and it's gross. Okay, it's not your taxable income, it's your gross income. Right. So that's how the income piece works. It's moderate rehab. So moderate rehab means we have a maximum of $35,000 to spend per home. If a home has handicap accessibility needs, if they have energy efficiency needs, or if they have lead hazards, then we can go up to $40,000. Oh, and septic. If you have a septic replacement need, then you could go up another $5,000. So for any one of those things, we add another $5,000 for a maximum of $40,000. We do things like we can replace a leaking roof. We can replace an old roof. If a roof hadn't been replaced in, say, 20 years, the average life back then of a roof was probably maybe 25. We can go ahead and replace it to prevent a leak. Okay, so it doesn't have to be leaking for us to replace your roof. We can replace an inefficient heating system. We can do windows and doors, would fall under energy efficiency. So if you do not have double paned insulated windows, then we can replace those. We can do handicap ramps, handicap accessibility in the bathroom. If a bathroom has a tub and there's a person in the home that's having a difficult time stepping over the tub, we can pull the tub out and put a walk-in shower, give a comfort height toilet. So we can do those kinds of things. We can address, they don't have to be code violations. We call them code deficiencies, or anything that would be, that would relate to health and safety. So sometimes we go out after an application is processed and accepted. The next step would be a meeting with our housing rehab specialist. She's a licensed contractor. We would go to the home and we'd go over the wish list that the homeowner had. Now we can't do anything cosmetic. So we don't paint. We don't do driveways typically, no landscaping, no maintenance things, like we wouldn't repair a mailbox. You know, we do the big ticket items that would be sort of overwhelm a homeowner. That's what we're looking for. If I will say though, if walkways and driveways become a safety hazard, if that's like we have an elderly person and that's a trip hazard for them to get in and out of their home, then we can put that under handicap accessibility or just a safety issue. But typically we don't do landscaping and walkways and things like that. So we will go in with the rehab specialist. She goes over that list with the homeowner. We help the homeowner prioritize what the most important things are. Sometimes the homeowner might not know they have a problem. She'll go and take a walk around the property. There have been times where the rehab specialist will notice that maybe the electrical feed into the meter, you know, might be frayed outside. And that's something that typically homeowners may not notice. And then, so she may point something out and say, this is something that you really should address. We will never do work that doesn't need to be done. I mean, as we all know, right now, we have high demand for these loans. So we're not looking to spend money where we don't need to. So the rehab specialist will create a work write-up. So that's a scope of work. And she will outline all the items that need to be addressed. She'll reference code. She'll reference the materials to be used. It's very detailed. The homeowner will review that and we'll have the homeowner sign off. Of course, that's a great place to ask questions, make changes. And then we invite our pool of contractors to come to the site for a contractor site visit. And that would be all the contractors, the rehab specialist, and myself. We all go out one day, one time, and this is where the contractors get to see the property, ask questions about it. Sometimes they see things that the rehab specialist might not have seen. There might be questions that may lead to some other method of doing a repair. And if there's any amendments, then the rehab specialist will make that and send it back out to the homeowner. So that's the opportunity for the contractors to see the property and then go back and create an estimate. So they have to put a bid in. We have a bid date. All the bids are sealed. They all have to be delivered to me by a certain day and time. I open them all at once. I review the bid results and we go with the lowest bidder. Okay, the lowest qualified bidder. So if a bid comes in and it looks kind of wonky, like maybe somebody charged, you know, I'm making it up, maybe $10,000 less to repair a roof. we might, well, that's kind of a lot for a roof, maybe $5,000 more than everyone else for a roof. So then we might ask for more information about that bid, and maybe they have the wrong square footage. So we would throw that bid out because it was an inaccurate number. Okay. So we review them all for accuracy, that they're all bidding on the same thing. We do go with the lowest bidder. If a homeowner wanted another contractor, besides the lowest bidder, they could choose that contractor, but they would have to pay the difference between that bid and what the low bid was. We also encourage, particularly in Wellfleet, I will say, we don't have one contractor from the Outer Cape. So if there are contractors that you know of, they can contact me. I will give them an application. We vet them. So all our contractors have to have their Massachusetts contractor supervisor's license. They have to have their home improvement license. If we are working on a home older than 1978, they must have their de-letting license, moderate risk. They have to have workman's comp, general liability. We check references and we check credit references. So being that it's state, federal funds overseen by the state, we have to follow every regulation, rule, you name it, federally, statewide, and locally. So all of our contractors are highly, some of them I've worked with for 15 years, and the newest one I've worked with for, I think this will be his 7th or 8th year that we've been working. So they've been around a while, they know the program. So if somebody knows somebody, they can suggest that contractor contact me, and they'll go through the same vetting, the same vetting process all the other contractors did, and they will go through the same bidding process. So there's no guarantee who's going to be the lowest bidder. We don't know. So once the work is underway, we do a loan closing, and then you get on the contractor schedule. TRI facilitates all the payments. So the contractors do not get any money up front. They get paid as the work is completed, inspected, and approved. So it has to have the homeowner's approval, my approval, and the rehab specialist approval. If something's not right, they don't get paid until it's corrected. And they all know that, so they're motivated to do it the right way the first time. We encourage homeowners to ask questions all the time, not necessarily standing over the contractor's shoulder, but certainly ask questions along the way about what kind of materials they're going to get. We don't like any surprises. So I love questions. I welcome them all, and it's always better to clear things up in the beginning. So after all the work is done, we do a final inspection. They pull permits for everything. We get the town inspectors to sign off, and then you're done. And so you have 1 year, homeowners have 1 year. If something's not right, to contact the contractor, and they warranty their workmanship for a year. So say they did a roof, and in a storm, some shingles blew off. It may be a faulty shingle, and then that's a manufacturer issue, or maybe there was one that wasn't nailed down. Then you call the contractor and he'll come back and fix it. That doesn't really happen very often. I can't remember the last time that happened. But if something's not right, you call the contractor directly, and they'll come out and they'll address the issue. So that's pretty much the overall view of what the program is. After the work is done, like I said, the loan, the mortgage just sits there at the Registry of Deeds and doesn't really do anything until you either sell your home, refinance, or the 15 years are up and you get a discharge. So that's about it in a nutshell.
It's a great program.
Yeah. Does anybody have any general questions about the program? I think we might do more detailed questions in a little while, but if general questions, I can take them.
Good afternoon. My name is Valery. I have a question. How many people will have your grant? Is it will play lottery? Sorry about my English.
Is it a lottery, Jean, or how do you select?
Yeah.
So
Correct.
the applicants, it's a first come, first serve basis with emergencies taking precedent. So as applications, so full applications mean our application is a 10-page application. You are required to provide your 2 years of your tax returns, all your pay stubs for the most recent 8 weeks. If you have Social Security, a Social Security letter. If you have pensions, we need the pension. So it's all your income, bank statements, a deed, mortgage, homeowners insurance. So there's a list of required documents. It's fairly in depth. And actually what I will take to address that, I'll go a little further on it, but if you have, we never like to say no to anybody, but if you're looking for a repair that might only be $2,000, this might not be the best program because you have quite a lot of paperwork to do. It's got to go through the same process. It doesn't matter how big or how small the job is, the process is the same. And we do tend to address those smaller jobs towards the end. The Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development requires that we spend 50% of our funding within the first 4 months or so. So in that, if we don't do it, it kind of counts against us for next year's funding. So we try to take the big ticket ones in the beginning so we can guarantee that we get funding for the next year. So having said that, so when all the applications come in, I stamp them the day I receive them. I put a stamp on it. I review them. If you're missing things, I contact you. If you use email, that's always the best way. I contact you by email with something that's missing. If you're accepted, you get an acceptance letter. If you're missing things, then your application is on hold until everything is provided. If I get, say, in 1 week, I get 5 applications and the fifth one that came in had a leaking roof, that one would jump to the front of the line because it's an emergency and it would be perceived as, a leaking roof, a failed heating system in the winter. Those things are going to go ahead. Now, it's a little bit of an oxymoron when you say emergency because we still have to go through the same process, which could be 3 weeks long. Sometimes with heating systems that fail, I can reach out to our heating contractors and we may do that first. So that might be an easier an emergency to do where we wouldn't have to necessarily, we could get just the heating guys out there right away. So we have a way to address them quickly, but it's not like anybody's going to get there like in the next 24 hours, that kind of thing. So did that make sense? Emergencies come first and everybody else is first come, first serve for completed application with all the supporting documentation.
So Jean, you have a very nice, simple pre-app.
Yes.
Do you encourage people to do the pre-app and then you get back to them and ask them to do the full application?
Yes. So what I have been doing, just because of the time frame of everything, we're rolling out a program and we're applying for the next year's grant. What I've been doing when I've been answering emails is sending the pre-app and the full app. So I encourage people to submit the pre-application. It only takes not even 5 or 10 minutes to do. And if you can send that back to me by email, that's great. If you don't have a way to do that, you can call me. We can do one over the phone. And the reason the pre-apps are important is because that will determine whether, first of all, it would determine whether or not you're eligible, whether it's income-wise or whether the work that you'd like to do is eligible. The other thing is sometimes if we get homes that they need a roof, siding, windows, heating system, septic, and handicap accessibility, that won't be covered in $40,000. So if we can't address all the issues, we can't be there. Having said that, what I have done in the past is very successful is that I will connect homeowners in a situation like that with maybe Barnstable County Septic Loan Program, and maybe they can do the septic system. Maybe Cape Light Compact or Fuel Assistance can do the heating replacement. Maybe Smock can do handicap accessibility in the bathroom, and then we can do the other things that nobody else can do, like window siding and roof. So I will do my best to help get other leverage funds in there to complete a project. Rarely do I turn people away for too much work. We try to work with other agencies so that you can get everything. But nonetheless, one thing that happens, I noted, I'm familiar with Wellfleet. I've done programs in Wellfleet before, are the large antique homes that are built in the 1800s. That can be problematic if there's a lot of lead. Then we've got to go to the drawing board and try to get money out of the state to do de-leading, particularly if there's kids there. So that's one reason the pre-app is important, so that you don't go through the full loan application and then find out you weren't a good candidate for the program to begin with. The other reason that it's really important is those pre-apps are part of our application to the state to continue our funding. So the more interest we have from Wellfleet with pre-apps, the stronger the application is. We have a lot of applications in for Dennis, of course, because Dennis has had the program for decades. And Brewster's never had it, so they're really kicking into gear. So having a lot of pre-apps builds a very strong competitive bid, because we're competing with other communities in the state for the same pool of money. Okay, so the pre-apps are important. Thanks for bringing that up, Elaine. That was a good point.
All right, can I ask staff another question?
Yep.
What is the timeline for the loan and repairs? Can we apply as soon as possible, and then when do repairs start? Just right
So
away?
that's a good question. So we want everyone to apply as soon as possible.
Well, his closing is on August 13th.
Oh, so you're new homeowners.
Yeah, just buying a home with known issues, and it sounds like a great candidate.
There are no issues with the.
Oh, known issues, like
Oh,
windows
I
and
see.
doors, for example.
yeah.
And
So-
air conditioner. How about air conditioner?
We don't do air conditioning without, we could consider it if there was a medical reason that you needed air conditioning. Respiratory problems, something like that. But typically we don't do air conditioning. Now, sometimes we put in mini splits, and that's heating and air conditioning. That also is dependent on a lot of other things. So I don't really speak to the sort of what the specifications are, because that's kind of out of my lane. But what I would suggest, you could submit your application now. And then, as you know, we can't do anything with it until you own the property. So it has to be, you have to have that deed filed at the Registry of Deeds. So you can submit your application now and let that be the only thing that's pending. And then as soon as it's pending, then we can press the go button. But I would suggest that rather than not do anything, waiting until the loan close, or the mortgage closing for the house. Because then if you wait, I mean, you can't, it doesn't really put you ahead of the line. It just gets the bulk of your work out of the way earlier, right? So maybe if you do that, you could submit your application maybe a week or two before you would if you didn't start anything early. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is you can also find out if you're income qualified. That's the other thing, and that you can find out before you own the home. If you meet the income qualifications, if the repairs meet the qualifications. Again, you wouldn't get a slot until we had it complete, but you could know where you stand in case something didn't work out, and then you could make another plan for what you needed to do.
So once the loan is, say it's approved, do the repairs start right away? So you said you handle the bidding, right?
Yeah, so I have to put the big star on everything that I say now, because everything that I say is based on the before times, before COVID. COVID is really wreaking havoc on construction like crazy. And, I don't like last year I did a septic system. It was an above ground septic. It took almost 5 months because they didn't have any concrete. Like, how crazy was that? Like, I heard there were shortages of pressure treated wood, but then there was a concrete shortage and they couldn't build the containment part of the above ground septic. So, so there's a star on everything I say. So, but typically when an application is accepted, I send that acceptance letter to the homeowner, and at the same time, I notify the rehab specialist that we have an accepted application, and that puts up the green light for her to do a site visit. So we call it an intake. So the rehab specialist calls the homeowner straight away. They make an appointment. So say that's a week after you've been accepted. So let's say it takes a week to get the rehab specialist out there. She has 5 business days to create a scope of work. So that's 2 weeks. After the scope of work, then we review, everybody has to look at it, agree on it, and then we schedule a contractor walkthrough. That's typically another week's notice so the contractors can plan. They have a week to put the bid out. If it's a really simple job and it's like a roof and some siding, maybe we won't even give them a week because they can do those really simple, really quickly. If it's more complicated where you need a heating system or plumbing, you know, then they have to get other specialists in the house to do a bid on it or to give an estimate on it. So the bids generally take a week. And then after the bids are accepted, then we do a loan close. So all in all, from the time I approve an application till we have a loan closing, that could be like 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. Once we do the loan closing, it's myself, the homeowners, and the general contractor has to come to the loan closing too. You ask the general contractor questions then, and then get on his schedule. So his schedule then dictates how quick the work gets done. What kind of work is being done will dictate the schedule. Windows were taking, last summer, they were taking anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks to come in. If there's a shortage on something, then we have to deal with that. And then of course the contractor schedule. So because we're kind of starting late in the game on the Cape, I don't really know how that's going to work out because actually all the programs started late on the Cape. Normally we start in the winter time when it's kind of quiet, you know, as soon as the summer people come down, then they're scooping up the contractors to do work on vacation homes. So I guess in the end, I can only really tell you it might be from the time you get accepted to the time we close the loan will be 3 or 4 weeks. We used to give them 8 weeks to do the work, 8 to 10 weeks to complete the job. But again, this all depends on materials and the timing of how quickly they can get it and they can get you guys on the schedule. Another thing I should bring up is we have to all be somewhat patient with pricing. So pricing has become a real hot button. Contractors could give a price on siding, and then the price could go 40% higher in a week. So we need to have a mechanism in there to do a change order because we don't want contractors. I mean, it's of no fault of their own. If they bid and then all of a sudden the price spikes up, then we kind of have to make an adjustment for that. So that's going to have a learning curve. I'm not really sure how that's going to work. So a lot of this is kind of, the program's been around for a long time and I've been doing it for a long time, but this is all new with all the delay, the kind of environment that we're in right now.
Well, here's the reason I brought it up. After the closing, he's planning to go to Russia for 2 weeks. I'll be here. So is that walkthrough possible to do without him? Like if I have the key?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we could, you could Skype in. I mean, typically for walkthroughs with the contractors, I usually try to keep the homeowner like over here while the contractors are over there because they could be discussing something. And if homeowners hear half a thing and then they get all this guy said he was going to do it this way, and now the other guy's doing it this way, and who's right? You know, it can create a lot of tension. So sometimes it's good for the contractors and the homeowners to not be near each other when they're doing the walkthrough. It's not required. We do like for you to be there to let us in, but it's not necessary.
Great.
Now,
And
if anything changes, of course, the homeowner would be notified of the change in scope of work, and they would be notified, and we would have to have their approval and all of that. Like, we don't move forward without the homeowner knowing, what's happening or if there's been any changes.
yeah, it's only 2 weeks that he'll be out, but.
Yeah.
I work as a school bus driver. I will take my
You need to take your
Vacation.
vacation before
Yeah.
the school year, right? That must be a stressful job.
And does the home report that, we have this whole report that lists the issues, is that going to be helpful?
Yes. Oh, you have a report from, you probably have an inspection report, right?
Yeah.
Inspection report. So what
course.
happened was, then, so he's getting a grant from DHCD, and we
Yeah.
earmarked part of that grant for the roof already, so that's covered under that.
Okay.
But everything else, there is a little bit of structural repairs, a little bit of plumbing,
Mhm.
insulation.
windows,
I think there's enough for
doors.
like the 35,000 without the
Yeah.
roof. So I
Yeah.
think
What kind of structural?
there is just, they're doing something in the basement where they put in the central AC and they drilled it right through the beam. So they wanted us to replace that beam somehow.
I
Or
see.
sister it, they wanted sister.
Yes. We can do some minor structural, but so structural is always a wild word, because if it's a big foundation problem, sometimes we don't have the funds for that. But what you're describing, I think we could do.
Yeah, the inspector said it should be easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful for sure to provide that with the application.
The report,
Yes.
okay. All right. Yeah, it'd be good to know, because I mean, we already set aside the part of that loan for the roof,
hmm
because I don't think they wanted to approve the loan knowing that there are issues. So that's
Right.
kind of, but I think
So-
with the prices nowadays, there's
One
enough.
thing about that is you'd also want to coordinate. So our contractors are held liable for everything they touch on a job site. And they never like to work when other contractors that are hired from the homeowner or some other funding source to work with them at the same time, because if something goes wrong, then it's a lot of, they did it. So it's always best to have, if you want to have the roof done first, or you do it at one before the other would be better rather than do them at the same time. They don't like to share their space.
That's
You
good.
wouldn't like that either. You'd have, way too much going on. So our guys also, they bring porta-johns and they bring dumpsters. So the bids all include that. So so that's a good thing to remember too in the prices, because sometimes homeowners will look at the price of things and be like, I can get a window at Home Depot for $300. Why is it $1,200? Well, because number one, it's a licensed contractor who's also has their de-letting license. They're gonna, it's their labor. They bring the dumpsters, they bring the porta-johns, they have insurance. So, that's all included. There's no line item on a bid sheet for their overhead, so they have to put it in their prices somewhere.
And so what happens if he decides to sell it for some reason, whatever, then it'll be 0% balance due from the sales?
So if you, so I think you guys came in after I was giving a little example. So I think it's worth saying again, because I can go into a little bit more detail. So it's a 0% deferred forgivable loan. So let's say 10 years in, you've decided you want to sell your property and move. So, and we're going to pretend that hypothetically that your loan amount was $30,000. So 1/15 of $30,000 is $2,000. So if you've been living in your home for 10 years, every year $2,000 is erased. So at the end of 10 years, $20,000 is erased, is subtracted from your original loan amount. So now your loan amount is only $10,000. So if you sell your home, and typically the work that we do will increase the value of your home because it's things like a new roof, new siding, windows, that increases the value of your asset. So
This is deed restricted. So it's complicated.
Right.
But
right. But nonetheless, the $10,000 would come right off the sale price. Okay, so you wouldn't owe $30,000. You won't owe any interest, and your loan is now you only pay the unforgiven part, the part that you won't be living there. So that comes right off the sale price. This is a good time too for me to mention. You know, when I do a lot of info sessions at senior centers. And when seniors hear mortgage and loan, they freeze. And actually, when their kids hear it, they start screaming, "Don't do that. Like, you know, if something happens to you, we don't want to get stuck with a mortgage." For our elderly part of our community, if an elderly person does this and say 10 years in, they pass away and they've left the home to their family, and a family member remains living there or moves in to make it their year-round residence, the terms don't change. And that new person who's going to live there, that family member, does not have to income qualify. So frankly, it's an amazing gift to give your family if you're elderly, if you do the program, because you get the work done, which makes your life comfortable while you're there. And then if you pass and it's left to your family, and your family either remains there or an adult child moves in, then the terms don't change and the clock doesn't start over. So it just keeps continuing. So if the elderly person passed away in after 10 years, it's still going to be discharged in 5 years. It won't start over again just because there's a new person living there. Does that make sense? So it's sort of great for that. It's great for homes that are going to stay in the family because that you can do the repairs and pass it along, and then the younger family members won't be impacted by having to pay that loan back. If they sell it, of course, they'll have to pay it back. But if it's a year-round residence still for the same family, they will not.
they'll just have to pay the mortgage, right? Somebody has to pay the mortgage.
Sorry?
Somebody will have to pay the mortgage still.
Well, not our mortgage. If there's an original mortgage, they'll have to deal with that, but not ours.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so there's no payment with this loan. There's never a monthly payment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Jean, I want to thank you. I don't know if anybody has any more questions.
I have another question.
Yep,
I left a full-time job, April 1st. So my income on my last 2 years tax returns is very different than what my income is now. Is that going to affect my eligibility?
no, it's your current income. So we do look at the past 2 years income tax, and that's sort of a roadmap to see what someone's usual habits are. Do you usually collect unemployment, or are you usually on salary, or does someone usually have redemption, IRA redemptions or something like that? So we see what the usual patterns are. If it deviates from that, then you just provide a letter, I retired, and we look at your bank statement. So we'll see that you're not getting your direct, your deposits anymore. So it's always, we go for the present point in time where you are, and we look back 8 weeks. Now, again, the auditor, so I'll say this, I'm very careful with everyone's applications because DHCD will audit these projects. They're not auditing the homeowners. They're auditing TRI and me. So they're making sure that I gave the money to the right people for the right reason. So I'm on the hot seat. So I don't want to be on the hot seat and I don't want anything to trickle down to the homeowner. So right off the bat, we're going to make sure everything is in line so that, you know, it's not dealing with the IRS and it's not dealing with a bank. So there is we have this parameter and there's a little bit of wiggle room as long as we don't break outside the box. So I will work with homeowners to help them illustrate with paperwork the best light of where their income situation is, right? So life is messy. There's all sorts of things that can happen, and nothing, you know, rarely is anything that simple. So I know a lot of ways that we can provide letters, we can provide certain things to illustrate where someone's at and justify, you know, the acceptance of an application. If I can't do that, then we can't accept the application. But we work together to get the best story out, and we have to tell it in numbers rather than, because there's no, you know, the homeowner's not going to be there in the audit. I am. So, you know, the more I know, sometimes the easier it is, and we can fill it in with letters. We can fill it in with whatever we need to. We can get creative. But like I said, we have some wiggle room as long as we don't jump outside the box. So that shouldn't, the short answer is no. Like, you're going to look at right where you are today. And likewise, you might think, you know, somebody could have a job and be like, oh, I hope I get a bonus this year. We're not going to count that bonus if you didn't get it yet, right? Because it might not happen. So we're only looking at where your solid income projection of the present going back 8 weeks. Okay. The other thing I'm going to say too is assets. We do look at assets in an IRA account, for example. Your asset is not part of your income. If your asset is earning dividends or interest, we count that as income, but we don't count the asset as part of your income. So homeowners could have $250,000 in the IRA account. Sorry about that. So they could have money in their IRA account. It wouldn't count against them. We would only count if that IRA account gave $1,000 in dividends a year, then that's what we count as income. We do add that, but we don't add the $250,000 asset.
Great. That answered my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, Jean, thank you for all your work on this, and you've made it obvious that you're very approachable, and people should not hesitate to get in touch.
Yeah, and I really emphasize, ask the questions. It's so frustrating when we go through some phase of this process and someone says, well, I wasn't sure and I didn't want to bother you, or I didn't want to. Ask the question. It's always better.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll get this up on the town website because there was lots of good information.
Yeah.
And
oh, can I add one more thing? So you can get you can email me for an application. Our website, TRI's website right now is having some tweaks made to it to get all our new information up. So you'll be able to download it from there. But in the meantime, email, if you have it, is the best way to contact me. If you contact the office number, I reply within 2 days. We're super swamped with a lot of stuff, and my office is in Yarmouth. So I can work with Elaine or somebody, we haven't talked about this yet, but maybe a process where we can pick up applications and drop them off. You can mail them to me. I take them over email, but my office hours right now, because I had been remote for most of all of last year, I'm going to go back more in the office, although for Wellfleetians, Yarmouth is a long ways away. So it's always best to contact me and see if we can make an arrangement to pick up an application or something like that. Or you can mail it.
And is that your own, the right email on the flyer?
Yep, it's jean@theresource.org. Yep, that's me.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's that. The phone number is to the Yarmouth office. And, call before you make the drive all the way down there.
But definitely we can talk, and we're happy to do anything we can to help facilitate that.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For doing this, and good luck to everybody.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you,
hope
Jean.
to
It was
see you
very
all
good.
soon.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you. It's a great program.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.